In this video, I'll be running through how the contracts module of MantisProperty works. The first thing that we'll do is create a new contract for a listing. To do this, click on the Contracts tab on the left-hand side menu. This then brings up a screen of all your existing contracts and their various statuses. So we're just going to create a new contract here by clicking Create New Contract. On this screen, we can then choose whether the contract is attached to a specific listing or not. This way, you can create contracts for properties that may not necessarily be in MantisProperty. If you wish to do this, just change this drop down to Not Attached to a Listing. This then lets you just type in a property address and it's not attached to a specific listing. But in this case, we're going to attach a contract to an existing listing. So we'll just choose Attach to a Listing. And then here you can select the type of listing it is. So we'll select residential for sale. And then in the next box, we just start typing the address. The auto predict will automatically bring up any matching listings, and you just select that. The next section here is vendor details. Here you can start typing the name of any of your contacts, or if you like, click the plus button and you can add a new contact, which will then automatically attach as a vendor on that contract. The same goes for the purchaser. Underneath these boxes, you need to put in the legal name for the vendor and legal name for the purchaser. And then you can also put in the vendor solicitor and purchase solicitor. You don't have to enter all of this information when you create a contract, because when you create a new contract, the minimum required is the address, the vendor details, the purchaser details, and then the sale price. So this way you can record this as an offer on a listing, and then if it's accepted, then you go back in and fill in all the information such as solicitors, deposit amounts, settlement date, all that sort of thing. So here we're just going to put in a sale price. For the deposit amount, we can put in a deposit, and then we can also put in an optional initial deposit amount. Now this might be when you get an offer on a property and then it's accepted and the buyer wants to put down an initial deposit of say $1,000 before putting down the full deposit. You can actually record this here. And if they do this, you just put in the amount and then you put in when the deposit is actually due. If you do this, MantisProperty will actually alert you if the deposit hasn't been received by that due date, and it'll alert you that that contract has an overdue status on it. Underneath this is the finance section, so you can tick whether the contract needs finance or not, put in a finance amount and a due date on that finance. Over here you can also put in the unconditional date for the contract and then the settlement date for the contract. You can also record the lender for the finance if finance is needed. Under this, you can put in your notes, whatever you need, and then click Continue. This then takes you to the edit screen of the contract, and as you can see up the top right-hand corner, it tells us this is a current contract. You can click on this button, Print Contract Details, and that will generate a PDF of all the contract information. And you can also click through these tabs to access the vendors, purchasers, any notes, and also documents. With documents, this can be used to upload the actual contract related to this listing or any other things like title searches or any other documentation that is required for this contract. If we click back on the contracts dashboard, you'll see we have a range of contracts here, including the one that we've just created. You can see that it was accepted on the date that we're recording this video, and it has not applicable for the deposit, finance, unconditional, and settlement dates because we haven't set those. So we're going to go back in here and set those. So we'll set a deposit amount and set a deposit due date. And we'll also tick that it needs finance, and we'll set a finance amount. And over here we'll set the unconditional date and then a settlement date. We'll click Save Update. Now if we go back into our contracts dashboard, you'll see now this contract has changed where it's showing a deposit date has been set for this date, but the deposit hasn't been received yet. The unconditional date that we put in is already passed, so it's ticked that to say that that's already passed, and the settlement date hasn't been reached yet, so it's showing that in red. So for the deposit, we want to mark that we've received that deposit. So to do that, we just click on View, scroll down to where the deposit due date is, and there's a tick box here, Deposit Received. So we just tick that and click Save Update. Now if we go back into contracts, you'll see this has now marked the deposit date as green to show that the deposit has been received. If any of these go overdue, so say for instance if a finance becomes overdue, it'll actually change the status and show it in this overdue tab. We also have other tabs for your settled contracts and any cancelled contracts. So if we go back into here, we'll mark this as being settled. So click on View, scroll down here, and we can just tick this to say settlement completed, Save Update. If we come back to contracts, you'll see it's now showing in the settled section here. Another way you can access contracts for your listings is to click on Listings and then go into a specific listing. And there's a Contracts tab at the top here. If we click on that, it'll show any contracts that have been assigned to this listing with all of the details and statuses. And you can also click the button to add a new contract to that listing